Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. My name is Chuck Perry. I'm the superintendent for Broken Arrow Public Schools, and I see a lot of familiar faces out here. We have a lot of school personnel that are coming that have heard bits and pieces about this bond issue and some various things, but they have not really heard a full presentation from what the Long Range Planning Committee came up with. So I'm excited, and thank you for our school personnel for coming out, along with the parents that are here, and hope you're interested in hearing what we have, in my opinion, big plans for Broken Arrow Public Schools. For the people that are here, please know that we are streaming, and this will be available to watch online also. So hopefully we have a lot of attendees watching right now, or will watch it later. So that's important, the way the world has changed, that we take advantage of our streaming also. But get started. We've got quite a few people up here tonight to go through some things. Again, welcome. And there's a few key people I'd like to introduce right now and let you kind of hear their role of how they've were part of the original plan of coming up with a lot of these items that that we'll discuss tonight that will be a part of this bond issue. So I'm going to start with my cabinet over here and start with Ms. Thompson and let her introduce.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tara Thompson. I'm the Chief Communications Officer for the district. And if you are here in person with us tonight, when you walked in, you got a note card. So just a little housekeeping detail. We will be taking questions via note cards tonight at one point during our session, so that we can get everyone's question on microphone so that our streaming audience at home can hear. So if you have a note card, save it for in just a little bit.
Good evening. I'm Carla Dias, Deputy Superintendent.
Hi, I'm Steve Dunn, Assistant Superintendent.
Larry Shackelford, Associate Superintendent.
Hi, I'm Natalie Enoff, Chief Financial Officer.
Ashley Bowser, Chief Technology Officer.
Good evening, Rosalind Van Jackson, Chief Support Services Officer.
Rusty Stecker, Chief HR Officer.
And then we have some key people up front here who were involved in a lot of the construction and planning of these items, so I'm going to let them introduce themselves also.
Roger Shepard, Director of Maintenance.
Mike Leach, Director of Construction Services.
I'm James Butler, Senior Maintenance Coordinator.
Charlie Abbott, Director of Plant Operations and Warehouse.
And Derek Blackburn, Student Services.
Thank you. And to add to our team, and what's really the heart of this is the Long Range Planning Committee. And a lot of people wonder what that is. It's nothing new. If you look back 2009, 2011, 15, 19, the Long Range Planning Committee basically has two jobs that we really ask them to do. One is to address the capacity and growth of Broken Arrow Public Schools, and they are involved when we have a major redistricting, when it's going to impact a lot of students, a lot of different schools. We call them in and they help draw the boundaries. In fact, most of the elementary, middle school boundaries that we have right now were created by the Long Range Planning Committee. In the past couple times we did that. So that's a vital part of what they do. It is made up of teachers, parents, administrators across the district. We get a kind of a broad spectrum of people. And then that second part, because you're here tonight, is that we really try to take a look at when a bond issue comes up, we take their input, because we see things from a school standpoint all the time, and it's always interesting. We love the Long Range Planning Committee because they're looking at it from a more global perspective as a parent or as an educator that's on the front lines every day. So we really value our Long Range Planning Committee. And a little bit later we'll get to three of the gentlemen here on my right that will be representing and talking about kind of the reasoning of some of these key issues across the district. We always like to say this growth, we always take it as an opportunity when we have growth and when good things are happening in Broken Arrow. We never want to be a school district that is declining in enrollment. That's not a good thing. I've talked to other superintendents across the state, and anytime that happens, all it does is kill morale. Everybody starts to worry about their job, and it's in a everybody's trying to hold tight that nothing falls apart over the next couple months or year. The exciting thing about the opportunity is that growth of number of students allows us to dream big, have a vision to do more things for our students and staff. What we're challenged with in Broken Arrow is we wouldn't mind if that growth was a little bit more like this at times instead of like this. And that's something that we walk and live every day as this community continues to grow. And I credit that a lot to our working with our chamber, our city. It's a great time to be in Broken Arrow. As we look at the Rose District and all this expansion, I give a lot of credit to our police department, our fire department for making Broken Arrow a safe community to live in. And all those things work together to give us synergy. And most importantly, that we're creating a great education for our students. One, so they'll have career opportunities. And I know it sounds corny all the time, and I almost hate saying this, but there's a lot of truth to this. Creating good citizens that are productive, and we hope that they stay in our community as a part of our workforce as we continue to grow, because that makes our home values rise, that makes quality of living rise, and as we can handle as many stoplights and the traffic as possible, it's better for our community. Going on to the next slide, let's talk about our 2015 bond issue that we're still living right now. First and foremost, that at that time it was a 12-year bond, $370 million, and it was the largest bond in Oklahoma for a short period of time. I think it was 3 or 4 months later, Tulsa Public Schools came out with a bond that was larger. But this was a very comprehensive plan put together again by the Long Range Planning Committee. The biggest challenge of the 2015 bond has been the pandemic and what it's caused in the aftermath of the rising construction costs, because of the dollar values that were placed and allocated to build a lot of these projects were not accurate in this, what we're living with today, and that's what we're battling with, a few areas there. But again, February 2015, it's currently in our final 2 phases that we're working through. A large part of this current phase is what's happening over Sequoia with our middle school. If you've been keeping up with that, we were looking to build a new middle school, a 6th one in the district, but we felt like it was a better plan after much study, vetted a lot of things out. An 8th grade academy, with the rising construction costs, we had to pull back, and we're building an 8th grade, kind of a pilot project at Sequoia Middle School that I think will really benefit our students, and again, preparing them for their transcripted high school year so that we can give them some pathways and they're prepared to go out into the world once they graduate. The 2 items still on the resolution, but potentially on the ballot for a revote, and I'll talk about those here in just a second. One is the location of the Aquatic Center. I said this in our Long Range Planning Committee. For those out there that are interested, we are still building the Aquatic Center. We are not cutting any budget from the Aquatic Center. We're excited about that, and I think it's long overdue for this community that those athletes deserve a place that's reflective of what the standard is in BA. So we're excited about that, and I'll talk about that in just a second. And also elementary number 17 is on this last phase. Both of those are on the last phase 4, and that starts in 2025. So let me go to that. I think that's the next slide. The two things, number one, the Aquatic Center. Right now, and how it was written on the resolution that was voted on, it gave a specific address to be built at the Kirkland Activities Complex next to our soccer fields. We have been in discussion, and it kind of was an organic type thing, that talking with the city over the past couple years about the potential of building it there, as they have come up with a plan at Elam Park next to Aspen Creek Elementary. They were thinking about an aquatic center, and as we talked more, we felt like it may be a great partnership for the city and the school to come together and use that space, because there's a lot of opportunity to partner with the city, because it's very expensive to run a pool, and we want the pool for our athletes in the swim program, but we also see it as a community benefit. We would love to see senior citizens taking advantage of it. We would love to see swim lessons. We would love to see club swim programs in our aquatic center. So to move that, because the resolution gave a specific address, that would be a part of a vote that we would take to the voters. The second thing, I hit everything there. Next thing is elementary number 17 is something that we'd like to take to the voters as part of this upcoming bond issue. And this would be a separate vote on the ballot. Elementary 17, we have some land at 41st and Elm that we could build a 17th elementary. Looking at all the opportunities in BA, people love their elementary schools they're at now for the most part, and redistricting is always it's an emotional time for parents because they hate to see their students move. We actually don't need more schools in Broken Arrow. We need more classroom space. And there are several elementaries that were built, and when the plans were originally drawn, we put in alternates that could hold more classroom space at those sites. And those areas or those sites have a cafeteria, they have a gym that's a little bit larger, they have hallways that are built for that. And what it does by adding on to current sites, that reduces the need to redistrict as much as we would building a 17th elementary. Plus, it cuts down on those recurring costs to run a 17th elementary. Every time you add a school, it adds about $1 million to the budget, and that is a recurring a cost out of our general fund. You've got to hire the administration, the counseling services, the our specials classes, and child nutrition custodians for the district. So if we could add on, we could be more resourceful and just, I feel like, be better stewards of our money by building on to our current sites instead of building 17 elementaries. School funding, we want to talk about this, and I want to transition here to this, and you're wondering why we're talking about a bond issue. This is something that came about as our valuations in both Wagner and Tulsa County over this past year. They rose enough that was beyond our projections, that gave us a little bit of a room, a higher ceiling, that we could go out for some more money to put towards our schools. And so I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Natalie Enoff, and let her talk a little bit more detail about the financial part.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Perry. I just want to cover real briefly just some basics of school finance so the community understands why passing a bond issue for our community is so vital. So we really have four main components of school funding, school finance. First of all is our general fund, and that is probably the most broad and expansive fund we have because most of our Daily operational expenses are paid from our general fund. And so that covers everything from supplies in the classroom to salaries and benefits, curriculum, how we pay for gas for our buses. General fund is a very wide encompassing fund. Next up is our building fund. That goes to support our building operation and maintenance, our janitorial supplies, any repairs and maintenance to upkeep of building. We pay for some of our safety and security expenses out of this fund. It's a pretty narrow stream of revenue, and with that narrow stream of revenue, we have a pretty defined set of expenses that we can pay for out of our building fund. Third is our child nutrition fund. That's where we pay for all of the food and supplies that run our cafeterias, that feed our children daily. And we, here in Broken Arrow, with over 20,000 students, our child nutrition fund feeds a lot of kiddos, and we're very proud of that. And finally, our bond funds, what we're here to discuss tonight, is voted on by our community, the electorate of our district, and goes to pay for our large capital improvement expenses. When I try and explain bond funds to people, I try and frame it in the mindset of these are items, buildings, capital equipment that we would take out a loan for, because that's essentially what we're doing is we're borrowing money in order to construct large capital improvement. We cannot use bond funds for consumable supplies. We cannot use bond funds to pay salaries and benefits of our teachers and our employees. It is to construct, remodel, equip our buildings, and really for infrastructure needs. And so I think that's a common misconception for bond funds is, especially when we're talking about teacher salary, support salary, is, well, why can't we just pass a bond to cover the deficit in salaries? It's for capital equipment needs that we would take out a loan for. So just to cover some broad basics of this bond issue, the amount is approximately $50 million. And I think a lot of people's question would be, why $50 million? Why aren't we doing another $200-300 million bond like what we've seen in 2009 and 2015? Well, Mr. Perry alluded earlier that what's allowing us to go out for this bond issue is because we have seen such tremendous growth in both Tulsa and Wagner County that we now have the capacity with our debt limit to be able to go out for a small bond. And legally, we are only allowed to go out into debt up to 10% of our net assessed valuation. And so that's why this time, this bond is targeted for a smaller amount that will still keep us within that debt ceiling that we're legally allowed to go out for, in the hopes in 5 or 6 more years to be able to go out for a more expansive bond. We are hoping to address some aging infrastructure needs. It will be a 5-year general obligation bond. We are looking at a millage increase with this bond issue. In the past, when we've gone out to advertise a new bond, we've tried to keep our millage rate pretty stable. Well, we feel like now with the community growth and things really taking off in our county valuations, this is an opportunity for us to capitalize on that growth and increase our millage rate just a little bit. Traditionally, we have been between 27 to 29 mills, and this bond, we are targeting 31 mills. And so I think the natural question would be, well, how much is that going to cost? The average taxpayer in Broken Arrow would probably see a $4 to $5 per month increase in taxes. Just for comparison, some of our surrounding districts, right now, Broken Arrow, we're about middle of the road with our millage comparisons between some of our suburban friends, Union and Jinx and Bixby and Owasso. We're kind of right in the middle of that. A couple of districts are higher, towards 32, 33, and a couple of them are around that 26 to 27 mark. And so that is our target with this bond issue. And as Mr. Perry alluded, in addition to the infrastructure needs and what will be discussed later, we do have those 2 remaining questions to answer from the 2015 bond.
Thank you. Once again, my name is Larry Shackelford, and operations is our next slide. You know, one of the things that maybe just the general public doesn't really understand is just the enormity of our school district. You know, a lot of times where our child goes, we just kind of focus on that one school, but we don't realize that we have 37 sites. So that means, you know, a lot of acreage, a lot of square footage. So I'm just going to give you just a little bit, just some fun facts here. We have 104 square miles in our school district. We have over 1,000 acres of property. We have 3.3 million square feet of building space. To put that in perspective, that would be 3 Woodland Hills malls. We have almost 1,200 instructional spaces or classrooms that we have to manage and maintain. And on top of that, 325 offices. So that's a lot of space that, you know, our maintenance, our operations team is constantly trying to, you know, keep at the BA standard. And, you know, one thing that really it always impresses me is just the standard that Broken Arrow expects at all of our schools. We want our kids to be in a clean environment. We want our community to be proud. You know, we spend a lot of money each year just on mowing. Just to give you another little fun fact, every time that we mow our school district, it costs us $11,000. Now you just stop and think, you know, that's a lot of acres to mow. So a lot of, as Ms. Enoff said, a lot of our operational budget goes to things just like mowing, landscaping, and all that. That doesn't even include maintenance of our roofs and HVAC. So we're going to talk a little bit about some current infrastructure needs that we have. You know, if you look at the slide, roof replacement was at one of the, really at the forefront of the long-range planning committee. And let me just give you an example. So far this year, we have already had over 600 work orders for roof leaks or roof incidents that we've had to actually we have really 2 companies that come in and repair those. So basically over 600 work orders. That's cost us over $300,000 out of our budget this year just to put a Band-Aid on trying to stop a leak. So we did an extensive audit throughout our district where we had thousands of drone photographs. We had auditors up on top of every roof in our district, and so we had them rate our worst roofs and came back and give us an estimate of how many of those roofs were that were rated F roofs, which that means they failed. And so we actually have 11 roofs in our district that are F rated. And I mean, after this last rain, I think we had 50-some work orders just in one day of just leaks throughout. Now, you guys understand, if that was your home and you had water penetrating that building, then you know what's going to happen. So, you know, we don't want that for our kids and our staff. So, you know, we have an expectation for excellence here. And I know fixing roofs and fixing HVAC and all those things are not, you know, fun and exciting. It's not like building a new elementary or building a new pool and all that. But you guys know that you would not go out and buy a new car and never change the oil. You have to maintain it. You have to fix it. You have to, because, you know, if everything is working and running properly, then it's more efficient. We use less energy. So it's the same thing. If we're not having to spend a third of our budget fixing roofs, guess where that money goes? It goes right back into the classroom. And that's what we want in the operations department. We would like to see that. We had an incident this year where we had a hot water that failed in one of our buildings that flooded all the administrative and front offices. That incident alone cost the school district $60,000. Guess who had to pay for that? The operations, because the way our insurance is based, it's per incident, and it did not meet the deductible. So what did that do? The light bulb went on. We said, hey, we better do an audit of all the hot water heaters that we have in our school district and find out, because the hot water heater that failed was, I think, roughly 25 years old. And your thought was, well, why would you change out hot water heaters if they're still working? So we don't have that same incident that we had at Liberty Elementary, where we had water, 6 inches up on the walls. So it was quite an extensive incident. It cost us a lot of money. So we went and we did an audit, and we found that we had 65 units across the district that were over 15 years old. So it's basically just preventive, maintenance is what it is. And then the next is HVAC units. We have over 1,600 rooftop units in our school district. And so we've done an extensive audit of those, and part of that is telling us that we have 583 units that are over 20 years old. So that was part of the plan to help replace, it's just like at your house. You can imagine when your air conditioner goes out, everything shuts down if it's hot. This past 12 months, we have completed 1,400 work orders just for HVAC repair. So, the older the units get, the more maintenance they require, the less efficient they become, the more energy that they use. So it's just smart, business to take care of those things. Another thing that's deteriorating across our district is our parking lots. And we've tried to address those the best that we can with the money that we have. We've done a lot of work this year at Wolf Creek and Oliver, and that was much needed. I mean, you might lose a bus and a chug hole or two that they had out there, but we just can't, with 37 sites, it's hard to manage every parking lot and for it to be the standard that we expect. So, that's a plan. And also, you can talk to any elementary principal, you can talk to any elementary child. One of the most important things that they have at that school is their playground. And so, we take a lot of pride, our operations department takes a lot of pride in providing a great playground for our kids. We actually have some guys in our general maintenance guys that are actually certified in safety and just, all the equipment and playground equipment they have. They really know their stuff. And just, today when we were at some different sites, we all go out and look at their playground, and the elementary principals are constantly, wanting for us to add new things and keep those upgraded, and because it's not just for our kids, it's really a lot of our community, especially some of our neighborhood elementaries. Those playgrounds are used by all the neighborhood kids, even after hours. We also have a lot of, as I said, we have, lots of classroom, lots of offices, lots of hallways. Now, as some of our buildings are getting older, we're starting to see more carpet needs. We're starting to see more tile needs. And so, we just don't have, we don't get a budget every year to just address floors. And so this is something that we're constantly looking at. And then, of course, furniture. Can you imagine how many student desks that we have in the school district with 1,700 classrooms, with 25 to 30 student chairs or desks in that classroom? Now just think about that. I know last year at the high school, I don't know how many desks and chairs that we're having to repair because we just don't have enough money to go out and purchase new ones. So Roger and his guys have gone out and purchased the right tools, the right rivets. We've got 100 chairs over there that we're working on right now because we don't have the money to put back. So, every site that we go to, they need teachers' desks, they need teachers' chairs. We were at a site today. The teachers had duct tape on one of their chairs. It was just, it was sad. So, you know, we constantly try to have enough money set aside to help with those needs, but you know, without bond issues, guys, we're never going to be able to maintain the excellence, to maintain our infrastructure at the standard that we all want. I've been to school districts and worked at school districts where communities would not pass bond issues, and the facilities, you were embarrassed. You felt sorry for your kids. For whatever reason, the community was just ingrained with what was good for me was what was good for my kids, and you know, that attitude has never been at Broken Arrow, and we have an excellence, and we want to continue with that momentum. We're seeing a lot of growth in our district, and we have to be able to continue to pass bond issues to continue to keep the upkeep of our growth and just the standard of excellence that we have. Okay, I think that's it. Mr. Blackburn?
Good evening. And I'd like to say, first of all, thank you for the past bond issues that that you graciously have given us the opportunity to continue to push to our kids. Obviously, being a long-term Broken Arrow person myself, my entire life, I do want to say that I appreciate what you put into our children. So, that being said, safety and security. As we look at the high school, and if you haven't, I encourage anybody to come out to the high school and look at the grounds here. The high school has always been the litmus test in regards to the rest of our schools, in regards to providing safety and security. And when we look at the high school, if we can accomplish securing this building, then we are almost 100% confident that we're going to take care of the rest. Now, when you talk about that, you look at the weaknesses of this campus. And being a graduate from here, the original design was to give that college feel and that openness. So as you look at multiple buildings, that was a bonus. That was something that we gave our kids the opportunity to expand out and grow, to feel a little bit of that luxury, to get them prepared to go on to college, etc. However, that has also now become a little bit of a detriment in the sense that the rest of our schools are all under one roof. And when you talk about the environment that we're living in today, where we want to make sure that we have a very secure location for our kids to go to and our staff to feel comfortable, having that open concept is no longer ideal. So when we look at what we're proposing here is talking about a fence. That fence is not something that we're talking about the exterior of the campus, which is a little over 97 acres. We're really talking about fencing between the buildings that now gives the individual the feeling of being under one roof. It also doesn't detract away from how beautiful this building is and the feel of the kids enjoying this environment. If anything, the students have asked for this because it would make them feel a little bit more comfortable. 3,600 students are on this campus. Coming and going. We have a lot of different programs, which again is beneficial, but we also have to look at the side of security. And so by adding the fence to the complex itself and looking at the stadium, which can be a liability in itself, people driving by thinking, how great would it be to go out onto that field and have a good time? That also is a liability for the school as well. So the fencing itself is not inexpensive. When you talk about a secure vestibule that all of our schools have, those of you especially have elementary or middle school children, as you walk in the doors, we're always funneling everybody to the main office. The high school here, as long as they come through the front door, that works. But all you have to do is walk around the corners and have access to the rest of the facility, and therefore the fence would force people to go to the main entrance, is where we want them to go. And additionally, we would have to build another access for the number of kids that we're talking about. So the large parking lot with it we have in the back that has over 1,000 parking spots to the east here in the stadium, at least 500 parking spots by themselves. And you can think of how the morning is going to work in securing this location and yet having people come to 3 to 5 locations where that's where they would check in. So that is part of the proposal in this bond issue. In addition, we have cameras. You'd be surprised that we have about 1,000 cameras in the district. Most of those cameras are almost 10 years old now. As with technology, and as you have experienced yourself, you have to update your computers. And it seems like they're not lasting as long as they used to even 5 years ago. The cameras we're looking at about $800,000 that we want to invest in cameras that provide us analytics, that improve the ability for our security officers to review what's taking place. They are, again, a tool to help us in regards to the safety and security of our students. Additionally, we have radios, and we're not talking about the Walmart radios that you can go and purchase and everybody goes, has a good time, and everybody can talk to each other. These radios are a little bit more robust. They cost us $1 million over 10 years ago. And as Mr. Perry was stating, with the cost that has been driving up because of COVID and just natural inflation, for us to replace over 600 radios is going to cost us every bit of $1 million or more. The other thing you need to know about these encrypted radios, which are very beneficial because no longer, whenever I was the high school principal, I would hear McDonald's getting an order over our radios. We have the ability to communicate about possible threats or just common situations that are taking place and not have to worry about anybody monitoring our radios and or hearing students' names, etc. So it protects us on the FERPA side of things as well. Those radios also are included for our transportation department, which we have the ability to communicate to everybody on the district. That's a huge benefit. A lot of schools do not have that. So what that means is we actually have one channel everybody can get on. So in any type of an emergency, the first thing that's always talked about is communication. And so this is a huge benefit to our district and something that we really need to continue to protect and refurbish. The covered walkways is in reference to the high school itself. Again, this is a large campus, and since they're not connected buildings, the majority of our kids upon passing have to go outside. Oklahoma is not always sunny, as you're aware, and therefore the issues that creates for our staff and our students trying to get to building, especially in bad weather, is something that we would like to address. And it is a safety issue in the sense that slips and falls and the issues that take place with our kids and our staff is a concern. Therefore, that project alone is estimated at a little over $1 million to establish canopies to each building, in addition to the fencing that we've talked about. And the last thing is lighting. We have, I counted up the other day, we have over 75 different events that happen in the evenings. The lighting is although it's very nice, it is still poor and inadequate in regards to how large this campus is. So anything you can do to provide a more well-lit location is actually a deterrent for individuals that have ulterior motives in mind that way. Out here on a football game, and we can have close to 15,000, 16,000 people here. The cars are parked all over the place, let alone anything that is ulterior motive of somebody, but just the access of people walking to their cars and people driving. So over 75 events, as large as we are, additional lighting would help with those types of situations. I think that's it.
Good evening. I'm Ashley Bowser, Chief Technology Officer, and if I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. Technology is great when it works, right? And so I just want to talk a little bit, as Mr. Blackburn alluded to, the fact that technology ages, and we, in some of our school sites, there are a variety of needs. And so, for example, our smart boards that exist in our classrooms. Right now, teachers have to deal with smart boards that are too dim, or smart boards that are pixelated, or smart boards that sometimes work or sometimes don't. Reality is that the infrastructure of that technology that exists in our buildings today, those particular devices, like there was a time when we could buy replacement projectors, and we're increasingly unable to buy parts or replacement projectors for those particular boards. And so the newer technology, the interactive displays that we're using in newer builds like Vanguard or Rosewood, the interactive, essentially they look more like televisions, but those interactive displays, those are the technology that we're moving toward. And really the smart boards that exist across the district are 10 plus years old, and they're not designed to last that long. And so that's one of the initiatives for the bond issue. It's a way to engage kids, be interactive with kids in the classroom. The second thing that I've listed there is just our Chromebooks, right? Our one-to-one initiative, all of our kids have Chromebooks that started at the secondary level. Now we're supporting it at the elementary level, and those devices, those Chromebooks are designed to a point where we replace them, essentially replace a set of Chromebooks every 6 years. And so we use that device, we purchase that device for a kid when they're a 7th grader. They keep it until they're a senior. And so what that means is that every single year we are buying about 3,000 Chromebooks at, $360 a piece. It's easy to do the math, and that's today's prices. We've seen Chromebooks escalate, and so in order to make that sustainable, there have to be additional dollars to make that happen. Our teachers use desktops in the classroom. I've noted up there infrastructure costs as well. I mean, as we have more and more curriculum that is online, as have more and more kids that are online, then one of the things that is not flashy, that nobody sees in the background, is our network and the infrastructure of our network, which means all of the wireless access points that the Chromebooks use to be able to connect. That means the switches that are in buildings that port the internet from place to place. All of that it has to be maintained. It has to be taken care of, and then just the robustness of that technology or that internet pipeline has to be provided as well. And so, it's interesting because right now in our buildings, we're working at slowly upgrading it, but the reality is that a lot of our buildings have the same internet infrastructure that they had 10 years ago. It hasn't changed a whole lot, and it needs to change in order to help meet the needs of our kids and the curriculum demands in the classroom. And so we know that we want our kids to be 21st century learners. We want them to be engaged, and they need to take advantage of those opportunities, as Mr. Shackelford alluded to before, about providing a sense of excellence. We want excellence to live here, and want those opportunities to be able to be a part of that. It also includes not as flashy things as like our phone systems, copiers that we use in our buildings. All of that type of infrastructure we have to continually replace. It's great to buy at one time, right? But eventually, over time, it becomes to a spot where you can't buy parts for it. You have to replace it. And then additionally, just our payroll kiosks. Those have to be, that's one of the things that we've identified as a need to be able to change. It's important for HR to be able to have a system that is accurate in being able to record employees' time and track those kinds of things. And so that's just an aging infrastructure that needs to be replaced as well. And so all of these needs for technology are things that we would hope that this bond issue would address in order to be able to meet the needs of our staff and students.
Thank you, Mr. Bowser. Again, good evening. Steve Dunn, Assistant Superintendent. When I engaged my team to talk about the different needs that we have in our student engagement areas, It would take us about 25 bond issues to hit that list. I had to make a scroll of all those different things. But what I love about this package is that it's being themed back to basics, and that's really what this represents. We have a lot of needs in our student activity areas. We have a student leadership program here at the high school that just has a tremendous impact on our building, in our hallways, in our classrooms, just the culture of the campus. If you've had a kid in it, then you know exactly what I'm saying. But we have space for 300 students, and we have 400 applications. So huge need in that area. We have, as we've talked about, the growth in our student pop. That impacts all of our student programs. And so just thinking about locker rooms and classroom spaces for those different areas, there are great needs. But again, back to the basics, we really nailed down a few projects that we wanted to bring to the committee that we discussed, and so some of those points with our fine arts renovations here at the high school campus. So the VPA, the Visual Performing Arts wing of the high school campus, it was designed for 2 grade levels here at the high school. And so by adding the 10th graders to the high school campus when we did, think about storage of all the different instruments. If you have a child who is in one of our fine arts programs, we're sharing a lot of classroom spaces. We have a couple of art classes that are in Building D that are, they have carpet and they don't have a sink. That's a problem in a visual arts class. So what this portion of the bond issue would impact are really all of our fine arts programs because of the trickle effect that it would have by touching such a large footprint of space on the west side of campus. And so I think we serve more than 1,200 students here at the high school that are in some type of a fine arts program. And so this would have a great impact on a large number of students and staff within our fine arts areas. And you can see some of the programs that would benefit from that, but it would also, for those 2 visual arts classes in Building D, it opens up a couple of other classrooms for other subject areas with classes that are busting at the seams. So just a large impact on the high school campus with that project in particular. Tennis facilities, again, back to basics. If we have a couple of parents here who have children in the tennis program, just inadequate facilities for the program. It's been that way for a while. They're doing a tremendous job. Wish them luck. We're in state tomorrow down in Oklahoma City, but tremendous coaching staff, tremendous student athletes, great kids, and they really just don't have much of a facility here on the high school campus. And so this would be a way to address a great need within that program that impacts a lot of students. Those students start in the 7th grade, and so we have a lot of kids coming through that program. And then the last piece, it might seem like a small ask in a bond issue, but if you've never been to a Friday night in Broken Arrow, they have their own little party going on down there. I try to stay away from it. It's pretty loud. They're playing music that is separate from the house, and it's pretty chaotic, but it's a safe place for a lot of kids to go on a Friday night. They're busting at the seams as well, so if you've been underneath the bleachers during a game, there are thousands of kids that are under the stadium, and you go and look at the student section, and it's full. So right now it takes up about 2/3 of the end zone, so just to be able to expand that, the full length of the width of the field, would just, again, provide a safe atmosphere for a lot of students on a Friday night. So like I said, there's a list a mile long, but in a bond issue that's truly back to the basics, we believe that this would have the greatest impact on the largest number of kids.
Good evening. Again, Rosalind Van Jackson, Chief Support Services Officer, and I'm going to start with speaking on buses. I'm going to go a little bit off the script here, so forgive me if you're following there. We transport just over 12,000 students each and every day across, as Mr. Shackelfeld mentioned, over 100 square miles. That is quite a long distance each and every day. Our buses run over 100 miles. If you're calculating and computing quickly, you'd recognize that that can get you to Joplin a day, that can get you to Oklahoma City, Norman, areas such as that. With our buses, one bus replaces 30 to 50 cars. And so not only is it a benefit to the students that are riding the bus, which are 12,000 of those, and 3,000 in addition to that, that we actually transport on field trips, it is a benefit for those who are in car rider lines. Imagine taking one bus off and having 30 to 50 more cars. That would be quite the challenge. So we're very thankful for previous bond packages that have allowed us to have a very low replacement life cycle for our buses. We have about 12-year replacement life cycle, which, as Mrs. Eniff had discussed with us earlier, helps us to keep some of those dollars captured in the classroom through the general fund and allows us to leverage these bond funds for infrastructure by utilizing them to purchase buses. In addition to our bus fleet, we have another need, and that is a bus terminal. What that will allow us to do and look at is the opportunity to absorb and accommodate some of the costs that are related to transportation across over 100 square miles, 12,000 miles each bus a year, 12,000 students. I'll be giving you all the numbers there. It'll allow us to look at the time, because there are 3 competing factors when it comes to transportation and its efficiency. One of those being staff, and as all of you are aware, everyone has severe bus shortages and severe bus driver shortages at the time. A second is capacity. We can only fit so many students on the bus. And the third is time. With an additional bus terminal, it would allow us the opportunity to reduce the amount of time that those buses are traveling with drivers and reallocate that time to lessen the schedules throughout the day, particularly the bell times. Specifically, what we're looking at doing is accommodating an earlier start time and end time for the elementaries, getting them away from that 4 o'clock time to maybe 3:30 time, and in the morning earlier than 9 o'clock. So that would be a tremendous benefit to us. In addition, there is a huge ROI in that. Of that 100 miles a day that we're traveling per bus, we would look at saving a minimum of 100,000 miles per year for the entire fleet. And what that would look like is just around $500,000 that we can then absorb and place right back in the classroom or help to accommodate some of the growth that we are experiencing. So as you can see, those 2 items are of critical importance to us in maintaining a safe fleet and also in accommodating a better situation for our students, especially our elementary students. Lastly, with regards to our child nutrition program, we have a quite dated facility. It's about 15 years old, and it only accommodates about 10,000 students. If you're aware of our current size of our district, it's 20,000 plus students. And so we are quite undersized, and with that becomes a lot of added cost in transportation to delivery and also procuring of items. We aren't able to purchase as much in bulk. Therefore, we pay a lot more money for the foods and things that we purchase for the 15,000 students that we feed every single day. And so with that, an additional child nutrition freezer would be greatly beneficial to our district in addition to the transportation needs that we have. We are very, very fortunate and lucky that we've had a passage of bonds over the past several decades, and I echo the sentiments of Mr. Blackburn, who came before me, that we're very, very appreciative of your consideration of this bond and of previous bonds and passing them for the benefit of our riders, and also the students that we feed nutritious meals every single day. With that, I'm going to thank you again and pass it over to Mr. Perry.
Thank you. As you can see from what we just went through, that was the culmination of our administrators, our team, coming up with a list of priorities across the district. This list totals about $90 million. And so you can see with the $50 million we have to go out to the public for, we've got to make some decisions. I will say we have worked closely, our cabinet, with the Board of Education, and I cannot say enough good things about our board and their support for our districts and the heart they have for students. One person I would like to recognize tonight, if Miss Debbie Taylor, board member, would turn around and give a quick wave, and I appreciate her coming tonight. Let's give her a little bit of a hand for her participation and investment of her life into our Broken Arrow students. So what you heard from all of us, we're really just the warm-up act for the main stars tonight that I really want you to hear from and their reasoning of how they got to that. But if you are, before we get started, a long-range planning committee member, either as a parent, teacher, served in any role, would you please stand a second also so we can give you a hand and you can look around and see the investment and time that they put in to make these selections. So now, without further ado, we have Mr. Jason Barnes, Sean Dolan, and Brandon Jackson. I would like them to come up and start going through those priorities that they saw from their district standpoint to represent the Long Range Planning Committee.
Thank you, sir. My name is Sean Dolan. I'm a 1987 graduate. Like Mr. Blackburn, I've been here my entire life. I have two boys that graduated in 2014 and another in 2019. I currently have a daughter that is a class 2025 or sophomore. I want to say I was very privileged to be asked to be part of the committee. I learned a lot of things. I had no idea what went into preparing lists like this and how to come to the dollar figures. I didn't know about the debt ceiling, if you will. So I think the information that was given tonight was great. I just want to let you know a little bit what we did. They split us into groups. For instance, the group I was in had Roger Shepard, the director of maintenance, we had elementary school principal, teacher, and a couple of parents. And so our job was to try and narrow a list down from the $90 million that Mr. Perry talked about to 50. And so we went through a couple of programs, discussions, listened to all the department heads talk about their wants, their needs. And our list came down to, and I think you'll see the same on the next two that came up. This is the list that our group came up with, is I think you'll find safety was the most important for all of us in the room. As Mr. Blackburn said, the world that we live in today, I know every day when my daughter leaves to go to school, that's the last thing that crosses my mind is how safe is she going to be, not only getting to school, but when she gets on campus and she does a lot of extracurricular activities like student council, leadership. She's on the basketball team, so that's really important to us. Listening to the conditions that our roofs and HVAC units are in, that means a lot of those units were probably installed when I was going to school. And I know that that is a long time, so that's obviously extremely important. And technology. We can't function, our kids can't learn without technology being upgraded as much as possible. So I'm not going to repeat everything that's on this list like all the directors have done, but we wanted to cover as many areas as we possibly could. We couldn't obviously give the money or allocate the money at the maximum level for everything, so this is the list that our group came up with. I think you'll see the proposals are very similar in terms of what we felt were needed and the most important. And the last thing that I want to say is, obviously, the future of our kids is super important and appreciative of what the district does and the excellence that they provide. And as Mr. Shackelford said, please don't take for granted that a bond issue will pass. So we do need the support of the community. Thank you.
If you have questions of any sort and you want to write them down on those note cards, please, we've got two people here, Lois Newman, my administrative assistant, and Chase Jackson back there. He will help out with getting those items picked up. So turn it over to Mr. Jason Barnes. I said your name wrong, Chase, sorry.
All right, Jason Barnes, graduated here in '91, just like Mr. Dolan, Mr. Blackburn. 3 kids come through the school, done a lot here. I believe in the motto that the kids say, BA till I die. And the community has really supported that. So as I'll kind of echo all the sentiments that we continue to be grateful of the bonds that have been passed in the past. They've been great. They've allowed us to be who we are and what we are. And if you don't know who we are and what we are, we're the biggest school district, which usually means we're the best because people want to be at the best. So my group came along. I want to give a little shout out to the committee because we had a couple meetings, and what surprised me about just the committee as a whole was, first of all, we had one meeting and we asked a lot of questions back, and they came back and several groups not only changed their budget items, but you heard that they heard what we had to say as a committee, because they're like, oh, safety is important. You know what? Safety might have gone up a little bit higher, that they heard that safety was important, but they listened to what the long-term committee was talking about, and they made sure that they got in line with us as a committee as well. So I appreciate that. The other thing that Sean was also talking about, learning about the debt ceiling and learning about even the operations, how we have to operate a little bit. You know, we don't have the money in that general fund that's just right there for that operations. So operations does rely on some bonds, which is absolutely new to me. That was something that I had never really thought of. From a business aspect, we don't think that way. So learning a lot about what the school district does and how they did it's been very helpful in this endeavor. With that, one of the couple things that we really wanted to do in our group was really kind of make sure that we spread the money out and make sure that everybody benefited from it. We had elementary school teachers in our group. We had security in our group. We had several different people in our group that were parents as well. So as you can see, safety was important to us. And as it was said, there's talked, I think it was $4 of what you were mentioning, how much it might cost us on our property tax. If you do that over 12 months, that's what, I don't know my math. My mother was a math teacher. So it's about $48, right? I don't want anybody to have to answer why we didn't spend $48 to save a kid's life. So safety for us is very important. You know, there's no reason, I can't answer that question. So as part of this bond, I think that's something that we really have to think about as we move forward. Roof replacement, we're the best, right? We want to be the best. We got to keep our facilities in check with that. The HVAC, being able to replace the HVACs in time, in budget with that. You know, we mentioned, hey, we spent $60,000. How much would we have saved if that was already replaced? Again, we're seeing some ROI coming back with this bond aspect. The transportation terminal, I said that correctly, hopefully. Transportation terminal. With that alone, we mentioned already, $4, you can save $500,000. Think about what we could use that money then back for the kids. Where else can we put it back into play? So that one to me is a no-brainer as well as we move forward with that. The other things, technology, I'm in the technology field. I can tell you, you know, 116 million, well, we look at budgets on a regular day for our business that are over 100. So 16 million is not a lot, but it's going to do what it needs to do for our kids at this point. Child nutrition, freezer, nothing new there. No kids starving. Not on my watch, not on anybody's watch here at the school either. Hot water heaters, fine arts renovation. You know, we want to continue to give back to the kids. We felt like the fine arts and the tennis, then the playgrounds were something that gives back to the kids so they can get excited about the bond too, right? Your kids aren't going to get excited about the roof repair or the HVAC, but the little kids are going to get excited when they see that new playground, when they see new facilities for fine arts. And I mean, I will admit, being part of Broken Arrow, going to other tennis facilities, we're not as high up as even one across the street might be. Might have a little better. So, you know, we got to get better than they for sure. So that's why we also kept that tennis facility in there. Like I said, as a whole, learning a lot about what we did and how this all works was a great experience from my perspective, and appreciated being on the committee. So.
Well, good evening. I don't know if I can add really anything else to what everybody has already shared. So I thought I would like to make this a little bit more personal. and how how Broken Arrow Public Schools has affected my life. I'm a lifer of Broken Arrow, 1992 graduate. Outside of a few years in the Deep South, I've been here all my life. Proud to say that I went here. I currently have 2 kids that are in this school system. And before I came and sat in on this committee, I did not have a real grasp of what it takes to run the school system. Listening to everybody talk about all of the requirements for roofs, HVAC, plumbing, the security. Was having lunch at Bramble 2 weeks ago and got a text that there was a, quote, issue at Broken Arrow High School with some kind of security rumor, and my mind immediately went to security. Like, we sure could use that. I think about, from a child nutrition standpoint, if I'm sure the majority of you have kids, I can't keep my cupboard full for my 18-year-old and 15-year-old, let alone 10,000 kids or 20,000 kids with a 10,000 capacity freezer just to take care of our kids. I think of our IT. When I was growing up, when you wanted to go do a report, you didn't look on your Chromebook, you went to one of these books. And I pay my annual insurance fee for my Chromebook for my kids. Take that for granted that the Wi-Fi needs to be running, that the smart boards for our teachers to do their day-to-day jobs. You just take that for granted because when the Wi-Fi goes down at my house, I'm public enemy number 1 till it gets fixed. So I couldn't imagine what it was like here at this school system or just in general. I don't really have a lot to say out of that, except I don't see this as a doom and gloom, get up here and share with you all the problems. I see this more as an opportunity for the residents of Broken Arrow to step in and bring Broken Arrow back up to where it should be. We're not there yet. We're $43 million short. Hopefully in the next few years, I don't understand the rules, we can get there and take Broken Arrow to the top. But I'm all for it, and I just thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thank you, gentlemen. And again, that was a culmination of several meetings with our long-range planning committee, and that's my big thing is I want the public to know these aren't picked out of the blue just for some special interest of a few minority group of people in the district. This is something we want to be vetted out, have a lot of input, and again, we're going to give the opportunity for some patrons to give us that input in a survey also here in a little bit. Again, if you have questions, I think we have a couple of note cards over here, questions that you would like to ask, please get them to Ms. Newman and Chase Elkins. I don't know why I said Chase Jackson. He's one of our high school. Do I now? Oh, the timeline, I'm sorry. The board, what we'll be able to do is once we start narrowing these down, as you can see, we have a pretty good list right now that are some top priorities. And in June, we will go to the board and give them some information about where the long-range planning committee landed at, how the surveys from our patrons and parents came back, and make some final decisions to get that list together. We will give them some time to study that, and then around July is our goal in the July board meeting to allow them to vote on a resolution to take this out to bond in October of 2023. That would give us some time once the school year started to advertise, get it out to the parents and make them aware. Again, it's key. These bond issues, the key is trust and transparency, that you know what we're thinking and why we're thinking of that, and our commitment and fulfilling the things that we have promised to do. The good thing is it does not take a lot of time for these monies to become available. By the end of the year 23, to early 24, we'll get our first phase. This $50-some million bond will be broken up over a 5-year period, and it'll be broken up in 5 different phases that will get approximately $10 million each year. So some of these items, it may take 3 to 4 years, 5 years before they're actually started on, but that bond issue will lay those items out and give us a chance to prepare them, and we'll have to pick and choose. A lot of it's just the cost of those different items, making them fit for each of the steps along the way. I would assume we would try to take care of some of our needs at our highest priority sites with the roofs, HVAC units, and so the security would be a top priority, because that keeps ending up being a point of emphasis as part of the bond. So that would be our time frame of putting that out to the voters. And again, not only will these objects, these items be on the bond issue, but again, you could expect 2 more questions, one about the aquatic center, and would it give us some flexibility to move that to another location across the city, and number 2, voting to spend those dollars allocated to elementary number 17 and instead putting pods across current elementary schools to absorb students, build classroom space, and again, be good stewards of taxpayer money by trying to lower our reoccurring costs each year from the general fund. So let's move on to some questions and answers. Hopefully we can give some answers, and if there's something we're not able to answer tonight, we would love to get your information and get that answer to you if for some reason we can't. So, yeah, you can read them.
Sure. Okay, so I'm just going to answer the ones that are directly related to like students or instruction and learning. Will playground remodeling address ADA and IDA compliance, including physical and developmental disabilities? Excellent question. Yes. As Mr. Shackelford had said earlier, we do have someone on our team who directly works with our playgrounds, and then along with Ms. Thornton, who's our Executive Director of Special Education, she constantly advocates for our students with special needs as well, so that is a definite yes. There was a second question, which I'm not sure I completely understand, so if you wanted to clarify, you're welcome to, or I can wait afterwards. Will technology needs include greater access for our language-delayed student population in the next 5 years? So if we're speaking about EL students, that might be online programs, and so by spending money on technology through the bond, that will free up some instructional bond money to buy online programs. It could also mean speech and language delayed students, which might mean our microphones for technology or speakers. And so again, yes, it will free up. But if you have something more specific, I'm happy to answer that question afterwards or right now. Okay, and you can always fill out another note card if you'd prefer. And then, what schools would get the elementary additions, and does it add where growth is? Excellent question. So right now, we haven't determined for sure, but we've already talked to those principals at Highland Park, Creekwood, Aspen Creek, Rosewood, and Timber Ridge. Didn't forget any? Okay. And so yes, that would account for the growth in those areas, so it really will help both problems. Or actually their opportunities. And along with that, those sites are already made to have an addition added. That's why we were specific in selecting those sites. So each one of them have a space where it was already designated to add a pod, at least one pod, and we've been meeting with principals and the team and looking at those opportunities for this bond.
And again, I want to emphasize that those sites that we do choose, you know, a lot of people can't ever guarantee this, and this is going to be an issue over the next 10 years as we grow. And we would love our realtors to be as honest as possible, but when people are buying a house in Broken Arrow and they think their child's going to go to this elementary through 5 years, we can't guarantee that depending on the growth. So those are a situation where we think we can manage that a little bit better and allow a little bit longer time, but those are discussions we're going to have. Did you have a question to clarify there? I think that's a great question, and yes, in fact, Nathan, Mr. Hutchings, he talked about that when we were discussing the different sites. There's some room to the west of the campus. There's an open area that grass isn't growing now. We talked as a possible area either to build or build more parking space. I think we're going to have to look at all of those. I'm going to be real honest. There's not a perfect situation in the sites. I could give you a reason why all the 5, 6 sites could not or would not be a great choice, but we do feel like it's a better thing to do than building that 17th elementary, but parking is definitely something we look at, accommodating parents, because we don't want the lines to grow, so large where it just becomes more of a traffic nuisance or whatever. So that's something we really look up as far as the stacking and the queuing of our buses. All of that has to work together. So great question.
All right, this question, it reads, could you please explain more about the transportation terminal? Where would it be? So we're looking for a transportation terminal that is located in the south side of the district, preferably south of 101st. Right now, our current location is just adjacent to the highway here, and it is really well placed. However, having another location in the south side of the school district would help beneficially. How would it function logistically to increase the efficiency of the department, thereby the time? Another great question. With one terminal being located at the northern portion of the district, the travel time to the southern portion of our district is anywhere from 25 to 35 minutes. So if we're able to capture some of that time back, that's less travel time for the driver, that's less time for the driver, to whereas we can look at the bell times and compress some things in areas and extend some things in areas where we may be able to provide better service to our elementary schools. Let me give you an example of that. So if we start in the morning at, let's say, 6:30, and it takes us 30 minutes to travel down south to the river bottoms, then we're losing 30 minutes of travel where we could use that driver to be going straight over from, let's say, the freshman academy to get students and take them to Sequoia. And it's just logistically easier for us to have something that's more centrally located to reduce the time of travel and then allow for those bell times to be accommodating more so to those younger students. So we would probably still need to take a really good look, depending on that location once we finalize it, at what those bell times would need to be, but definitely shortening the time that it takes to travel will overall improve logistically the outcomes for those bell times and allow us to reduce the time for those kiddos who are at the elementary age. So great question.
Something to think about, Tulsa Public Schools has basically double the square mileage we do in Broken Arrow to cover. They have 4 transportation terminals, and we just have one for all of our students across Broken Arrow. If you look at Union Public Schools, they are about 28 square miles, I believe, and we have 100+ square miles, and we both just have one. And their district is very compact, and so just having one is very easy for them. One of the main things I hear when I go out to sites is how late our elementary students are there. We have studied this for years, trying to find a solution, and with our current setup, it is difficult to change, because we hear a lot of feedback the latter part of the day is not the best time for an elementary student. The teachers have said if you can end it earlier, we feel like taking advantage of that a possibility would be better student outcomes. So that terminal is pretty important to us, and teacher morale at the elementary level, something that's very important to them, I think is going to be a big win for the district also.
The first question is, could you also please explain more about the sources of income for each of the funds? Well, there's a lot that goes into our general fund, which again is our most expansive, broad fund. That's a mix of ad valorem, taxpayer dollars. We receive probably close to 50% of revenue in that fund from state sources. So right now you're hearing a lot of talk at the Capitol about legislators trying to hammer out that education budget, and that is vital to funding public schools, and so a large portion of our revenue comes from the state budget. We do receive federal funds in general fund, and those come from some of our specialized programs like IDEA. Our title programs all fall under that federal funding. In our building fund, that's mainly driven by ad valorem taxes. It's a very small, dedicated source of revenue, and so while operationally that fund covers a lot, it's a very tight fund because we're not receiving a ton of revenue into that fund. And then our child nutrition fund, that's also a mix of federal funds and local dollars that our parents pay for our students to be able to eat in the cafeteria every day. But we also receive federal funding from our free and reduced applications that go through the USDA. So there's a wide variety of funding that goes into school finance and school budgeting. Next question, assuming the bond passes, when will these projects start? So the good thing about a general obligation bond is it's a relatively simple form of bond financing, and so after the bond passes in October, we expect probably shortly thereafter to hold a special board meeting to call the actual sale for those monies. And then past that, it's usually about 60 days until the district receives the funding. And so optimistically, we would expect late winter, early spring for those projects to start once we receive the funds. Of the current annual budget, how much is allocated to improvements that is listed in the bond? I can tell you in our general fund that budget is $155 million annually that covers our entire general fund. A large majority of that $155 million is tied up in salaries and benefits. We pay almost 90% of that fund to pay our employees. So when you think about what's left operationally to fund everything else that you heard discussed tonight, that leaves about 10%. That's not a lot of discretionary funding to keep everything going and moving and maintained in the way that we expect and our standards here in Broken Arrow. And so a large majority of our projects that were discussed tonight are funded from that building fund, and that fund is approximately $5 to $6 million a year. And so you can see, without the support of our community and our bond funds, those operational expenses don't happen. The bond fund is so vital because it protects general fund dollars of staying in the classroom, being able to pay our certified and support positions, and being able to maintain all of the other projects throughout the district. If the bond is not passed, what is Plan B? Well, we're optimistic that it's going to pass and that we're going to have the support of our community. But as these gentlemen on the Long Range Planning Committee alluded to, we never take that for granted. It takes everyone in the community to pull together and to pass a bond issue, and so we don't take that for granted. Also, with a bond issue, it requires a supermajority of our electorate to get that passed, and so that's not just 50.1%, that's 60% of the people coming out to vote yes for this bond issue. And so, again, we are very optimistic that it will pass and that we'll be able to complete these projects. But if it doesn't pass, then that would mean our Board of Education and our cabinet coming back together to determine what the next step is. Do we need to look at different projects? But we feel very strongly that the projects that our Long Range Planning Committee has come up with meet the highest needs of our students and staff, and will put us in a good position going forward.
And to add to that, I saw an interesting news report from one of our local channels about a bond issue that did not pass, and the headline behind the newscaster said, "Community doesn't support bond issue." The actual vote was 57% in favor of the bond issue. So the majority of people did favor it, but the headline and the message was they didn't support it. So that is a very important part that people don't realize, is that 60% is key. So turn it over to Mr. Dunn.
First question, what is the city of Broken Arrow doing in the pool partnership if we are still paying the same amount? It's a great question. So I actually spent about 6 hours today in our first feasibility study meeting that we are going through along with the city of Broken Arrow. Natatoriums are very complex facilities, and so that is yet to be determined. So this feasibility study looks at three things. It looks at a needs analysis, so like what does the school need in terms of a competitive swim program facility? And then for the community, what does the community need from a parks and recreation standpoint? What are some of the trends that you're seeing around the country? How can we engage more of our community members during those hours of the day where it's not being used as a competitive swim pool? It's a large investment. And so we just want to make sure, again, that we're making the best use of the monies that our community passed in this 2015 bond to explore a potential partnership with the city. And so after the needs analysis, you go to a conceptual design part of the study where they look at, okay, so for what the needs are of the district, what the needs would be of the city, what would that look like in terms of a facility? And then from there, you look at the operational expenses and the revenue opportunities that that kind of a facility can bring to a community. And so that's when you start looking at the different models that exist between a school district and a municipality. They're out there if you look them up online. Many different models exist pertaining to who brings capital to the table versus who brings the operational expenses. I mean, just a lot goes into that feasibility study. So we're right in the middle of it. We had our first meeting today. We have a few more with a deadline of around August 1. So hope to have more information to be able to answer that question. That is the most thorough answer that I can give on that. And then the second question pertains to the tennis court. The tennis courts are badly in need of renovations and expansion. Right now, there are no lights, no bleachers for spectators, no court dividers. Union and Bixby both have dedicated two-story tennis clubhouses at the center of their tennis complexes. Booker T. Washington announced late last year their newly renovated and expanded tennis complex that includes multiple lighted courts and team dressing rooms. Boys varsity just won the regional championship, absolutely. And the junior high team was highly competitive this season. What is the district's commitment to allocating resources from this proposed future bond issue to construct a dedicated tennis facility that is at least on par with Union's on Garnett? It's a great question. I agree with all the above. I've been here since 2010, and we've really never been the ones chasing. We've always been out front. And so the goal is to never have at least what someone else has. We want the very best for our kids. We have the best kids in the world. They deserve the absolute best, and we don't apologize for that. This bond issue really is about getting back to the basics, and so that's what this group is really tasked with. The Long-Range Planning Committee was $90+ million worth of proposed projects with a $50 million budget. And so to have exactly what the vision would be for what we want to have in the tennis program is $5.5 million. And so when you look at $90 million worth of projects and you're trying to get it to $50 million, we're looking probably more at realistically, and this is up to the committee, but a phased project where phase one might be addressed in this bond issue, and then as Mrs. Enoff alluded to earlier, when we're able to come back to the community in the fall of 2028, 2029, we could address the future phases of that project. So great question. Yes, it is a priority. As you can see, it's just one of a few smaller projects from the student engagement piece of the district.
I have a question here that says, with the projected growth, how much of a gap will there be in classroom space if it is 5 years before the next bond issue? One of the things you may not realize is that as a growing district, from last year to this year, we grew over 500 students. That's bigger than some of our elementary schools. And so we continue to grow at a very rapid pace, which is why I think for me, the revote of the elementary 17 is so important, because that will allow us to be able to meet the needs of our growing community in the areas where they're growing. I mean, if you think about those schools that Dr. Dias mentioned, they're all in areas of Broken Arrow. Broken Arrow's growth is happening all over the place. And so that will allow us to respond and meet those needs. In the interim, we take a look at schools and we try to provide the best boundaries that we can to be able to accommodate those school sites so that they're not overcrowded. We don't have classrooms that are overcrowded, those kinds of things.
And tied into that, the greatest challenge, and it's a fear for me, is teacher retention and having great quality of teachers in the classroom across the Broken Arrow. This teacher shortage, folks, is real, and nothing scares me more about trying to find teachers that feel like it's a calling. They have a heart to impact students, not only academically, but well beyond those things that could change the course of their life. And one of the key things for that is classroom size, how many students they have in each classroom. If we have very large numbers that a teacher is dealing with, that is not a good thing. I don't think it's the best learning environment, and it really is, a teacher does not feel like they can be as impactful if we have classrooms, elementary classrooms of 30 plus. So the challenge with Broken Arrow is going to be able to keep up with the growth by building classrooms and not only recruiting teachers into BA, but also keeping the ones that we have. And we can do that by having manageable class sizes. That's something that's very important to me, and it's something very important to the board that we've talked about, because we feel like that's the best environment to be a part of. I'm a 1987 grad, along with Mr. Dolan here. My parents graduated in BA in 1950. Growth has been, this is not the first time we're dealing with it. When you look back in the mid-'80s and the explosion of BA, and talking to Dr. Oliver one time, and he talked about they didn't have any money to buy any land, but they needed more classroom space, so they took a portion of the high school campus and built Westwood Elementary on the high school campus on the corner just to have classroom space, and it was basically a main office area, counseling area, cafeteria, and they put portables around it. So that's something we're going to have to look at, and look at the growth at all times. We study that. We look at where neighborhood developments are and try to adjust to that, and that's going to be a key part of it. If I could add one little soapbox item here before we close, because I wanted to get in an hour and a half. We'll stay around as long as you have questions for us. But there's a lot of talk across the state, really across the nation at times, about school choice. The heart of school choice is parents making a choice to live in a community for their students to go to school there. That is school choice 101. The next step of that, and even a higher commitment, is voting and passing bond issues so that their child has the best opportunities they feel it possible by making that financial investment with their ad valorem tax dollars. And I just want to encourage you to spread that news, because the parents in BA are hoping they're moving here because they feel like their child is going to get the best education. They're going to have teachers that care about them and that want to make, again, a positive impact in their lives. So we appreciate that. I can't emphasize what Mr. Blackburn said earlier. 2009 bond, 2015 bond. We're reaping the benefits of that. Unfortunately, we were so far behind. We were a bedroom community for years during the 80s that did not have that tax base, and it was a lot of catch-up in 09 and 15. Wasn't a lot of dollars for maintenance, so this is what this bond issue will be focused on, and hopefully you would be able to go out and spread that message. And again, thank you for our employees who took the time to invest in tonight and learning more about it, but more importantly to the parents and patrons that came, and that you that are watching online. That's going to make the biggest impact. And again, we want that transparency, we want that open communication with our patrons. So if you have more questions, we'd be happy to answer those. So thank you for coming. Did I miss anything else? The survey. Do you want to talk about that a second?
So tomorrow we will be releasing a link for a survey where our community can give us even more input. So you heard these gentlemen tonight talking about their proposals. The community will have some opportunity to take a look at all of those categories like safety and security, technology, those sorts of things, and give us a ranking. What do they think is most important? That will just give us a little bit more information to give to our board, who will be debating this over the summer, as we then hopefully come back to the public with a bond proposal later this fall. But that will come out tomorrow, and we will also have it available on our website, and we'll push it through social media as well.
And again, we appreciate you taking the time to do that. We have no hidden agendas. Again, we want to be a reflection of what the community wants, and doing our part as a school district to make this a great place to live, work, and play. So thank you for coming tonight, and if you have further questions, we're happy to answer those. Have a great night.